Hello, everybody. Welcome to show number 604, our tribute to the esteemed Ralph Roberts MBE, also JP from New Zealand, longtime friend of mine for over 40 years. Those of you joining by Zoom, thank you for joining. Several people. We got 4 people on already on the Zoom. If you want to join in, we've got the number. We'll give it to you again for the Zoom call. It is 293, the meeting ID is 293-740-285, 293-740. I beg your pardon, that is not correct. That's not the right number. I hope I didn't just give that to, it's 267-220-6570, 267-220-6570, and the passcode is, no surprise, TFE. We are live from the Beach Street Yacht Club as usual. Julia is here. And I trust you're well, Julia?
I am, actually.
Any hot tips?
Oh, I think we're about to go through another of our river storms. And so we...
Come on. You had to grow up in Michigan where Paul Henderson is in Toronto to tell you about weather. This is Scotch mist. A little bit of rain. I saw on national TV today. They're talking about our weather. To hell with them. Peter Valentino, I've given him the wrong number, but I'll get into that in a sec. Thank you all for joining us. A special tribute to Ralph, and just a couple of, we're going to get right into it because some of you have to go, I know, and I'm going to open with a beautiful piece of audio from Yosha Dominicus, Hoffman Dominicus, who can't join us live, but she sent in a nice audio to which I have put some slides thanks to any number of you, and especially Richard Gladwell and a few others. But a program note before we get into all that, this Friday our guest will be another esteemed FOSI. Andrew Pindar from GBR will be with us telling us he's a man, another international man of mystery, Julia.
Absolutely.
Like John Emmett, and we got a segment from John later in the show today. He will be in the B block, not in the A block as usual, because we want to stick the whole A block to this tribute to Ralph. But Andrew will be with us on Friday. He's been in Jeddah and he's been in Milano this week, and he'll tell us, or he's going to be in Milano to tell us about all of that and more. Some interesting stuff that he's involved in, as always, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool stuff. And then next Tuesday on the 4th, will be Paul Cayard coming on. He having stepped down as executive director of our National Olympic sailing program here in the States, and it's been a big controversy, and frankly, a big mess. Paul's going to shed some light on all that.
Needs light.
It needs light. Next Tuesday. So that's Paul. Let's get into our tribute for Ralph. And here again is the Zoom ID, and I want to tell Peter Valentino so let me pause for the cause here for a moment because I gave him the wrong number by text because he lost it otherwise. And it's 267-220-6570 for anybody. And the passcode is, as I said, TFE. There we go. For anybody who wants to join in, I see a number of folks are on already. And we'll get to them in a moment. But to start with, as I said, we have some audio from Yosha Hoffman. I knew her as Yosha Dominicus, and she got married to John Hoffman, who sadly passed away some years ago. Terrific Finn sailor, terrific sailor. And Yosha, who was a bit of a, shall I say, a protege of mine when we started umpiring back in the 80s, as Kirk Brown knows, who's on here. And we trialed it at Medemblik up in Netherlands. She's from the Netherlands, up at the Royal Hollandia Yacht Club. And Kirk, you'll remember the early days of umpiring. You were involved at Long Beach Yacht Club. And we'll get to Kirk in a moment. So Yosha was one of the very first umpires, and she went out in the back end of my rib and cold, rainy, up on the Medemblik, up on the IJsselmeer. And she said, I'm not sure I'm cut out for this. I said, trust me, you are. Just carry on. It turned out to not only be one of the great umpires in the modern history of the world, Julia, but she also did at least 2, maybe 3 America's Cup juries as a member of the jury. So the very esteemed Yosha, who's a dear friend of Penny Roberts and of Ralph. In fact, you'll find out at the end of this, we have a bit of a surprise that I didn't know. But here is Yosha, and here is her audio to some slides that I put together with the help of many of you.
There cannot be many sailors in the world who have not in some role or other met Ralph Roberts. His involvement in the sport we all love spanned more than 70 years. He sailed his first overseas events in the 1950s and 60s. What amazing adventures those regattas must have been. We all know the highlights: winning the Prince of Wales Trophy in the International 14s at the Royal Yacht Squadron in Cowes, England, finishing 6th at the Finn Gold Cup in Medemblik, the Netherlands, but also successfully competing in the Finn in the 1960 Olympic Games in Naples, Italy, and in the Flying Dutchman in the 1968 Games in Acapulco, Mexico. After his active dinghy days, Ralph decided to start giving back to the sport which had given him so much. Highlights must have been his role as sailing manager of the successful New Zealand Olympic team at the 1984 Games in Los Angeles and as chef de mission at the 1992 Games in Barcelona. Ralph did not only give his time and expertise to the sailing community in his own country. He also made a huge contribution internationally through the International Sailing Federation as a member of its council, the Youth World Sailing Committee, and the World Youth Sailing Trust. I met Ralph in yet another role, as a race official serving on international juries and umpire teams around the world. In the protest room, he would never ask theoretical questions. He got straight to the point and talked from sailor to sailor. And if he was needed for a meeting or a protest hearing, there was only one place to look: in the boat park, where he would be talking to the sailors, listening to their stories, and learning about new stuff on their boats. Here too, he reached the very top, serving at the 1988 and 2004 Olympic Games and the 2012 Paralympics. The gold medal that World Sailing awarded him for his services to sailing in 2013 says it all. But what makes Ralph's contribution to our sport so special is that he did not just seek to play a role internationally. He was just as passionate, if not more so, about his own club. The pride with which he showed guests around Takapuna Boating Club and explained the plans to improve and extend its facilities was priceless. The outpour of heartwarming responses on Facebook these past few days says it all. To many of us all over the world, Ralph was a friendly, wise, and positive sailing colleague and mentor, and an inspirational role model for whom integrity was paramount. But above all, Ralph, you were a very, very good friend.
What a nice tribute from Josje. Josje Hofland, Dominicus from the Netherlands, longtime friend of Ralph's and an umpiring judging colleague, as she said, and a terrific gal. Now, there's one other thing, that the previous photo, just before that, well, this photo, in fact, in the PIP, in the picture-in-picture right now, is the morning that she and her late husband, John, were married in New Zealand in front of the Roberts home, out on the jetty, in fact.
Oh, how nice.
Because Ralph, not only MBE, but a JP, Julia, Justice of the Peace.
As he should be.
And, held in esteem by all the locals. And that photo was taken early in the morning before he married Josje and John. And here is a shot of the JP having just married Josje and John there out in front of their home in Takapuna in 1997. And along with that is the wedding party or some other great sailors and longtime friends, Jack and Joss Lloyd, the late great Jack Lloyd, with another superb race officer, regatta director, and international judge, and some of the kids on the jetty. And Josje, who couldn't be with us today live, but she sent in that audio, and we put these photos to them. She says, I'm planning on meeting up with Penny and Joss in New Zealand at the end of the year, and I want to thank Josje very much indeed for sending along that audio and those some of those photos. Cool stuff, eh, Julia?
Absolutely. Really nice. Really nice.
It makes our sports, what makes our sports so fabulous, you end up meeting, you know, as I said, I met Ralph, I guess, 44, 45, in the run-up, not just in the 84 Olympics, but in the run-up to the 84 Olympics, because we had pre-Olympic regattas, again, as Kirk Brown will remember, in 81, 2, and 3 in Long Beach, and Ralph was there as the manager of the sailing team from New Zealand. And ultimately, they won 2 medals. Russell Coots's gold, which you saw in one of those photos, we'll show again in a moment, but also they won a gold in the, it shocked the world, frankly, when they won a gold in the catamaran, in the Tornado catamaran, and then a silver, and I don't remember, but one of our guests, no doubt, will remember. If you're just joining us and want to join in on the Zoom, I see that Peter made it. And I gave him the wrong Zoom code originally. It's 293-740-285. Is that right? I am totally confused. That is the wrong code. Forget that code. It's 267. Forget that code. It's 267-220-6570. Sorry for the confusion. We had another code in there from Julia, a luncheon meeting yesterday. I apologize. So if you're just joining, you can join on. There's a number of people already in, 6 people, including I see Richard Gladwell has joined. Welcome, everybody. And Penny's up there in the upper right corner, Kirk Brown, Paul Henderson. I don't know the gentleman in the lower left corner. Is that Craig? Craig, turn your mic up, please, if you would.
Okay.
Now we can hear you.
Good.
And that's
Can you
Ralph
hear me
and
now?
Penny's son, Craig. Is that right?
Sorry.
Nice to meet. And then we have there in the middle from Malta, a judging friend of whom we've not. I don't think we've met, have we?
No, we haven't.
But
Not yet.
sorry for sending you the wrong code. You've obviously
that's
gotten
fine.
on now. And that's Peter Valentino from Malta, who's that's one of the great sailing countries in the world. And delighted to have Peter on, who did a lot of judging with Ralph, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Paul Henderson, I think we should start with you. I'm going to go to this picture, and because you are there in that photo in 1958 on the lawn there, I guess that's the Royal Yacht Squadron. It sure looks like it, the old squadron. Paul, if I'm not mistaken, is on the far right. That, believe it or not, Julia, that's Paul Henderson.
Wow.
And this is the, go ahead, Paul.
You know what happened there?
Please.
Well, first of all, with Ralph, it was hard to become his friend, but once you became his friend, you couldn't get rid of him. And he was my friend for 65 years. And he, at that deal, announced to everybody that I was going bald. and that was 1958. And he had an electrical business, and I was a plumber. So we really, along with Bungie McRae, who was a Maori from Rotorua, we went everywhere at that regatta together. But if you look at the group there, what a group they are. You got Uffa Fox, you got Stuart Morse, you got Bruce Kirby, who designed the laser, Mike Peacock. What a group. And Jeff Smale, who Ralph crewed with. And although the Canadian 14 sailors won the team races, Ralph and Jeff Smale won the Prince of Wales, which in those days was the most prestigious dinghy trophy in the world. And we kind of went everywhere there. We lived in Boys Town because nobody had any money, and they had a bunch of cots. And so Ralph started a pillow fight with the Kiwis and the Canucks against the Americans and the English. And I had a leg hold around the American, George Moffat, and Ralph hit him over the head with a pillow, and his chin hit my knee and knocked him out. That ended the pillow fight. And so those were the great funs. And then we were all invited to the Royal Yacht Squadron for dinner. And being tradesmen, the Maori, Bungie, and Ralph and I thought we were going to have to go in the tradesman's entrance. But we went in the front door, and they put us at the head table. And as they poured the port after the first round, It was very, very quiet. And it was 1958, and they hadn't done anything to the Royal Yacht Squadron after the Second World War. And Bungie said, Henderson, I'm a hoary, and by the look at that ceiling, you're the first plumber to be in this place. and Ralph and I kind of just broke up. He was a wonderful friend. So many stories about him. In 1960, at the Olympics in Tokyo in 1964, I was sailing Flying Dutchman and not doing very well. And after the second race, Ralph was the
he was the reserve in '64.
Yeah, but he was the coach, and the team of Helmer Peterson and Earl Elms weren't doing very well. They had done badly in the first race, got disqualified in the second, and so Donald St. Clair Brown, who was the manager of the team, and Ralph decided that what the boys needed to do was relax and go on a night in Kyoto. Took them out to Kyoto. What a wonderful time we had. And the Kiwis went and won a gold medal because they'd taken them out and relaxed them in Kyoto. And that was Ralph. Ralph always said the same thing to your face as he said behind your back. And he was always very constructive. And I have so many stories to tell about him, but I should tell about one when he was at the International Sailing Federation and on the youth committee. He started the Youth Trust to fund sailors from emerging nations to go to the youth championship who didn't have the money. So as you know, on Thursday night, we used to always have a formal dinner at the Royal Thames Yacht Club. And Ralph had already hit Ding Schoonmaker and George Andriotis for money. So he went after Paul Phelan from Canada. And as you know, he owned a lot of things in Canada. And Ralph went up to him and said, Paul, we need money for the Youth Trust. And Paul said no. And Ralph went away very depressed. And Phelan yelled at him, Ralph, come back. I told my wife when I was asked for money, I would say no. Now I've said no. How much money did he? and those were the great things that happened.
That's a great story.
Ralph would phone me for 65 years, every couple of months, give me his advice. In fact, I talked to him just a couple of weeks before he passed away. What a great friend I had in Ralph Roberts and Penny. Penny was such a great supporter of all of us. Thank you very much.
Great stuff, Paul. Thank you. Who would like to go next? I thought that was Craig on this is like the Hollywood squares here on the left center. I think Richard Gladwell's telling me it's Brett DeTier, isn't it?
Brett DeTier, that's me, yes.
Hi, Brett, welcome. Thank you. And Richard helped out. Who's that on the bottom? Somebody I don't recognize. Who's bottom center?
Who may not hear you.
I don't know if he hears us. Can you hear us there? Or maybe he's muted. I don't know. But I'm going to, maybe I'll go next while we get everybody else teed up. Richard Gladwell is here. Thanks again, Richard, for the help you gave us on a lot of these slides. And we're going to have some fun with this because he was such a dear friend and for so long of a lot of us. And Yosha, I thought, did a fantastic job, didn't you think, Julia,
Absolutely.
of summing that all up? You couldn't have asked for a nicer summary of that. And Paul, thank you for that. And I'll go to this next slide. Who can ID that besides probably Kirk Brown, maybe Paul?
Yeah, that's Coots and the great Ralph.
That is Ralph. That's 1980.
Vincent in Los Angeles.
Exactly. And that's 84. There's another shot. These courtesy of the IOC Museum and the New Zealand Yachting Federation. But Ralph was the team manager. He was tough. He was good. I was the jury secretary, so I was dealing with the team managers. And Russell, whom I barely knew, had met at the World Youth 3 years before that. But Ralph was a team manager extraordinaire, as I said earlier at the top of the show. Who was the, Richard Gladwell, remember, who was the silver medalist in addition to your tornado sailor and Russell?
Oh, that was Bruce Kendall, bronze medal, windsurfing.
Brett, thank you for that. So it was Bruce Kendall in the windsurfer.
Yeah,
Or the wind glider, I guess it was in '84.
Yeah.
Brett, what was your involvement in those days in the Olympics?
Well, my Olympics go back to 1964 in Tokyo, which is where I first met you, Paul. I was the Finn reserve to Peter Manda in Tokyo, 1964. And I'd known Ralph a bit before that. I've known Ralph about 62 years, I think. I jumped straight from the little P class into the Finns in 1961. And I did that because I wanted to get amongst the top guys as soon as I could. People like Peter Manda and, of course, Ralph Roberts. And I remember first meeting Ralph, it might have been 1961 or two. I'm not quite sure about that. But I remember when I shook Ralph's hand and this giant hand came out. And I shook my hand. I thought, oh, my God, how do I ever beat a Finn sailor with a handshake like that?
He was a big boy.
Yeah, so anyway, we went on and became arch Finn rivals for many years, and we've each got our names 5 times on the National Finn Trophy, so I'm quite honoured to be up there with Ralph on that trophy. And I was the Finn rep in Munich in 1972, and Ralph was a reserve for the Dutchman there, and also a backup for Finn. And then in 1984, we had our Olympic trials and for Los Angeles, and Ralph was already the manager. And I think I was placed 3rd in the tornado class then in the Olympic trials. And at the last moment, I was thrust into the job as the team coach. So I went along with Ralph, and we sort of shared the role of management. And I really learned then just how marvelous Ralph was at dealing with people and networking and getting things done. A lot of people talk these days, but Ralph talks and then gets things done. And
Isn't that the truth?
remember we went to the pre-Olympics in Long Beach, 1983, and the whole New Zealand team was put up by a lovely guy called Bill, right on the shore there in Belmont Shore. And he just loved the Kiwis, and the locals did. We had a wonderful time there. But of course, the Olympics were coming around the following year, and the IOC were insisting that all athletes be in the official Olympic village for security reasons.
In downtown LA, not in Long Beach.
But Ralph somehow, in his usual inimitable way, managed to swing it that we could all stay in Bill's house on Long Beach.
What was his name, Brett? Bill what?
Look, his surname eludes me just at the moment, but he was a lovely guy. In fact, he loved the Kiwis so much that once he knew we were all coming back to stay with him for the Olympics in '84, he actually built a whole new wing on his house to accommodate us, and I thought it was just amazing.
Kirk Brown, any recollection, Kirk, of who that was that housed the Kiwis in the '80s?
I don't know if. Go ahead, Penny.
Penny knows.
Yeah, it was, excuse me, Bill Kingsley.
That's right. Yeah, it comes back to me now. Thank you, Penny. Your memory is better than mine.
Gladwell,
so
the best thing was have Penny and Ralph invite us for dinner at their house. Do you remember? That's when I remember you in Rotorua.
All right.
I don't know.
I hope it was in Takapuna, not in Rotorua.
Excuse me, Takapuna. Rotorua is where Bungie comes from.
Richard, did you have something to add?
Yeah, is my audio okay?
Yes.
Well, I sort of first ran into Ralph when I was 12 down at the Olympic trials in '64 for the Flying Dutchman, and I used to go to intermediate school, which is where you go when you're between 11 and 12 in New Zealand, and it was just up the road, so we used to wander down past the beach, see what's happening on the trials, and then wander off home, and those trials were really quite remarkable in a lot of ways. I mean, firstly, for the caliber of people that was sailing and then the number of FDs that were there, it was really, really competitive. A lot of guys had rolled out of the 58 Prince of Wales Cup, from New Zealand and just gone straight into the FD because that was going to be the new two-hander. And somehow I picked up they printed a program, and I took it down and got Ralph and Jeff and Halmer and Earl to all sign it, and that was sort of one of my big treasures when I was a kid. But then after that, they went on, and Halmer and Earl went on to win the gold medal, and that was sort of really well reported in New Zealand because we had sports reporters those days that actually knew something about the sport and could write it up. So
Unlike you and me, is that what you're saying, Richard?
Yeah. The denizens of the opera, yeah. But that sort of, was really created a huge impression on me as a kid that you could see these guys down there sailing at the beach, and then 3 or 4 months later they were off in Tokyo and winning the medal. And I got into OKs and actually knew Ralph's brother Clive because he was sailing those extensively, and Clive was he was a great ambassador for the sport. I mean, it was even more so than Ralph. It was something he could never say no to, and he was always on. There was a group of us used to sail out of an informal club about 2 miles away from Takapuna, and he was always after us to come down and sail at Takapuna, and eventually the Castaway thing fell over, so we all moved down there. And then Clive used to, have people drop by regularly in the shop, and he would be mentoring them, and, we learned a hell of a lot off him. But, then you'd see Ralph coming out of the back of the shop as well and, say hi and chat to him. But it turned out he actually worked for my father as well. My father was district electrical engineer in the Ministry of Works, so they used to farm out these contracts for wiring up schools and all that sort of thing. So Roberts Electrical then was in two phases. It had the retail shop, which Clive ran, and then there was the contracting business with Ralph ran. So when Clive got killed in May 1975, it sort of caused a bit of a rejig in the business. So Ralph came out the front, and he basically inherited Clive's sailing school that used to drop by, and it just kept on going from there.
How about this shot, Richard, from 1978?
Well, that was when I
is that you in the middle?
I did the Contender Worlds in '77 and came back and sort of starting up again, and they were a crew short, so I jumped in with them in the soling. So that was an old soling that we had, and it was a New Zealand built one. And, that was as good as everyone had here. So we sailed that in 77, 78, 79. That's actually taken at an Olympic sail, which they held off Takapuna, which was basically a New Zealand scheme that, Takapuna backed along with Don St. Clair Brown and Peter Montgomery. And the whole idea of that was to really try and reverse the 1976 Olympic result where we came away with nothing. And of course we went into 1980 and the team wasn't sent. But then in 1984, that was really where that whole scheme came into play. So we were sailing in that regatta. It was all the Olympic classes sailed there in one spot. And the winners from each fleet got a ticket to the the Europeans or Worlds for their class. So that then got them onto the Olympic qualifying ladder. But under the New Zealand system, once you're class qualified, anyone could be selected, and that's what used to happen.
Well, let's stay on the Olympics for a sec, because I'm going to go back to this shot from the '84 games. Ralph obviously helping RC get his fin out of the water on the dolly, and as you probably everyone on here knows, certainly Brett will remember, Paul will remember, we had quite an incident at the end. Russell had won, or so we thought, in the fin class, won the gold over the American John Bertrand. And one step more was to check his wet clothing. What was the limit in those days? And was it 20? Paul Henderson will remember, because we reduced 15. It. Was it 15?
Yeah, well, it wasn't the rules like, yeah.
It was originally nothing, and then 40 kilos, and then it went down more.
Well, we've gotten it down now to what, 10? Isn't it down now to 10 kilos? But I thought it was 20, but I could be wrong. Maybe it was a little less than that. But in those days, you had to get your, especially the winners, they were taken into the measurement tent where they had this device set up, and it's still used in various classes. And there's Ralph on the right with Russell, and there's a scale you can't see up above Ralph's head, but you had this gantry, and you put the clothes on minus your your Speedo or whatever you were wearing under everything, and put it over the gantry, and it drained for 1 minute. And if it didn't, if it weighed more than whatever the weight was, whether it was 20 or 15,
I think it was 20 then.
I think it was 22. But then if you didn't, you were flicked, you were disqualified, at least from that most recent race. So here is Ralph helping Russell rearrange their wet clothes, because the first time they weighed it, it was over. Rearrange, try again. The second time they were, and I was in there in the tent as a representative of the jury watching all this. I was the jury secretary in '84. And then finally, after Ralph arranged it some more, and Ralph, you can imagine Ralph, the electrician, the senior serious guy that he was, and then Russell, who's an engineer. And I don't know, those of you who know Russell, I've done, I don't know how many America's Cup campaigns with him and against him, but he's very, particular. And they're arguing about how to arrange it. In any event, finally they arranged it, were satisfied with it, had a third weighing, and it was right on or just slightly under. Brett, you'll probably remember that as well. Were you in the tent, Brett, that day?
Yeah, I was there as well. And my recollection was that the rack had 2 horizontal bars on it, and all the clothes were laid over these 2 bars and dipped for a certain amount of time, and then pulled out of the tank, and they had to drip for a certain amount of time. And of course, it came out slightly over the limit, which is strange because I got Russell and all the guys to weigh all their gear before the regatta started on the official scales to make sure we were just a bit under. So we were very surprised when we got caught out. But when it failed I think a second time, I had a bit of a chat with Ralph, and we pointed out the measurers, and Ralph, in his usual calm way, that what was happening was that the
usual calm way.
Clothes in the top of the rack were dripping on the clothes on the second row, which didn't give them a chance to drip dry. So I think Ralph managed to convince the measurers to do them in 2 different, split the load, weigh them separately, and add it up. And I think that's what happened in the end.
Well, that's a great memory.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened. I just was watching and timing and being sure the measures and everything, because we assumed this was coming to the jury. The jury sent me over there. Paul, you'll remember who the jury chairman was in '84?
No.
The late, great Lynn Waters.
Oh, Lynn Waters. And we talked, it was 20 kilos, 44 pounds.
Right. It was a lot of weight. And then you and I, among others, but you and I led the charge at what was then IYRU because I'd had a wrecked lower back, 2 back operations by then. And you had back problems. Every sailor we knew, either if they had a long back, had back problems. If they had a short back and long legs, kind of the more athletic look, they had bad knees. I mean, you think of all the Finn sailors. Brett will remember that as well.
Yeah.
I remember sailing my Finn in the harbour one day with all the thick, wet woolen jerseys on, and I went into the changing room, took all my gear off and put it in a big bag. Yeah. And there's a set of scales there. I thought I'd see what they weigh. It was 60 pounds.
Yeah.
So it's lucky that my back still works.
Okay, let's change tacks here, so to speak, and go to judging and umpiring. That nice piece by Yosha notwithstanding. But Ralph did a lot of judging, a lot of umpiring. Kirk Brown remembers and really says he was an important part to the Congressional Cup back in the days, right after we started umpiring back in '88 and all through the '90s. But let's go to Peter Valentino, who sent this picture to us, and I think Richard had seen it. And Peter, if you're on, we'll come to you next because he's in Malta, and he said in sending me this photo yesterday, he said, "Tom, ahead of your tribute to Ralph, I wish to add that besides all the qualities he had that we know of, Ralph was one who really welcomed me and surely many others when I became an IJ, an international judge. We kept contact throughout. I was on a jury during which one hearing really took loads out of him. Yes, he was disappointed, but he raised above it all." Peter, over to you.
Hi, good. Tom, first of all, thank you for doing this because, Ralph meant a lot to many sailors worldwide and to many people worldwide.
Our pleasure.
So I think the fact you've got this for him is great. So well done. And it's so nice to see, Penny, Paul, and etc. Anyway, and I think Yoshi summed him up really well. I think Yoshi's was a great rendition of Ralph as a person and his life. To me, Ralph was incredibly wise, intelligent, generous, fun to be with, and above all, genuine. Genuine as a friend, genuine as a person, genuine in the jury room, throughout. And I was very shocked. I was a friend of mine in Cascais in Portugal last week. Paul, you can guess who. And we had dinner and we were on our way to bed, sort of thing. And I saw Penny's post, and I just couldn't believe it, because to me Ralph was like on the verge of immortality, if you know what I mean. He was really so special. It's a pity that distance kept us apart. But anyway. I mean, the first time I met Ralph was around 2000 in Alexandria, Egypt, of all places.
Wow.
And we had this Oppie event, and here, before hearing number one, Ralph, we were lodged at the Institute for Maritime Affairs, or something like that. It's a huge compound built by America. And it was there to aid students as a school, basically, maritime school. And we were lodged there. They had rooms, they had a part of it that worked like a hotel sort of thing. And at one point, he went to his room. He came back smiling. He said, I went to my room. He said, I opened the door. He said, on my bed, I saw two legs. He said, two legs. He said, the two girls, he said, the cleaning girls were like lying down on the bed. And he took it so lightly, we had such a good laugh about it. And that was it, sort of thing. Went out on the water, came back in, protest number one, which was, I think, an Egyptian against a Tunisian. Now, keep in mind, I'm from Malta, so I know that I can understand the language. They didn't know this. They didn't think of it. And, one of them told us a story, and which was translated. He had his translator, his coach. The other one said his story, and, and the jury was about to believe the story that was given to us by the translator. Until I said, well, sorry, Ralph, I said, it's not quite like that, because, the boy said one thing, the translator changed it a bit. I picked it up. So we took exactly what the boy said, which I had already written down, sort of thing. And when they came in, they were very surprised. And Ralph said, this guy's from Malta. I mean, you shouldn't have done that, but in other words, what I mean to say is other people would go ballistic about something else, would get really angry. But, the lesson he taught them afterwards, because we kept the coach there, of course, sent the kid out, sent the other team member out. And I appreciated the way he handled it, because at the end of the day, on every jury, the jury takes the character of the chairman.
Yes.
So if the chairman is boisterous, then the jury is boisterous.
Good,
if the
good
chairman decides to be, really, the jury changes. You've got same people that change a chairman, and the mood changes, sort of thing. The character changes. But yes, I think that Yoshi really did a great job. What I learned from Ralph, and not only from Ralph, but from Paul, from you, and also from King Constantine, was, yes, go around the dinghy park, talk to people. He used to pick up their life jackets, he used to look at their boats, he used to look at the ropes, he was interested in everything. But it wasn't just to make contact with them, it was because he was interested. He had an interest in people's lives. It wasn't just me and you. It was, he had an interest. It wasn't like, he was a great communicator.
Well, originally, Peter, you're quite right. Originally, those of us who did that, and Ken Ryan was a great proponent of that, yes. and Paul Henderson, who's on here, Paul was a great yes. proponent of it, even though he wasn't necessarily on the jury, but as president or vice president, whatever he was in the day. Let's go to the dinghy part. And originally, I'd go down to the dock when I was chair of the Star Worlds of the Far 40 Worlds, and was criticized for going down and talking to the sailors. Yeah, Kirk Brown's going to talk about this vis-a-vis umpiring in a minute, but Ralph was absolutely tops at that, and the sailors trusted him, liked him, and I think because of that, Peter, you're absolutely right. It's changed the tenor, it changed the tone at regattas going forward. Julia, you were going to say something.
No, I was just saying I like the remark and find it to be very true that the jury follows the style of the chair.
Exactly right. Well, Peter, anything else? And then I'm going to go to Kirk Brown and talk about umpiring at Congressional Cup.
I've seen, actually at the event, because then apparently World Sailing put that photo we've got up there of Ralph and myself up. And that was the Paralympic Games in London. And again, hearing number one was a difficult one. It is not one that I look back with kindly, because it should have been so simple. It was so simple, in fact. And it kept coming back to us, through CAS, through whatever, for 9 months.
Hang on, through CAS. So this was a protest that kept going up to the Court for Arbitration in Sport after
Correct.
You all had decided it. Now,
Correct.
I think I may be wrong, and Richard may know, or Penny will remember, but was Ralph on both the 2012 Olympic jury, and then I believe he chaired the Paralympic jury, Peter, on which you served. Is that right?
Ralph definitely chaired the Paralympic jury. I think that the year before we were both there at the test event.
He did the Olympic jury in 2008.
Say again, Richard.
He did the Olympic jury in 2008, and then he was Paralympic chairman in 2012. So he didn't do the Olympic jury in 2012.
Did he also do the jury in 2016 in Rio? Okay. Well, we got that sorted out. Peter Valentino from Malta, thank you very much indeed. I really appreciated your sending that note and that picture.
You're welcome.
It was fantastic, and there's no better guy in the sport than Peter when it comes to not only being a great judge but also multilingual, and we come to appreciate.
Former judge of expired now.
Well, we've all expired in one respect or another, right?
Expired.
Right, Julia?
Absolutely. Huh? Unfortunately, yes.
Kirk Brown in Long Beach. Let's go to you, sir, and tell us if you would about what Ralph meant to you in Congressional Cup in the early days in the 90s in umpiring.
Well, let me start by saying Peter's point is very well taken. The chairman of the jury, and more importantly, the chairman of an umpire team, really sets the tone for the team. While the jury will hear protest after racing, the umpires are field of play officials that are making instantaneous calls, are on the water all day long, and then have to debrief with the competitors later on. So it is a very tight bond for the team, and the chairman certainly sets the tone for that. But let me rewind a little bit back to 1988. Tom mentioned working with Yossi in Mendeblik a little bit on some beta testing for some umpiring. Well, Tom came to Long Beach in 1988 and rolled out an umpire program for the first time for a major regatta in prime time. And it was very clear at the end of that 1988 event that some that were on the umpire team were not suited to be umpires. So they kind of fell away. And in 1990, Tom suggested bringing some guy up from New Zealand. Well, they brought Ralph Roberts, but more importantly, Penny came with him. And that became a 30-year love relationship between Ralph and Penny, and that's one word, by the way, Ralph and Penny. So Ralph was invited in 1990 to join us. He was not re-invited in 1991, and that was because Penny couldn't come. He then came back in 1992 and was an umpire at the Congressional Cup for eight times, wow, which is a huge number of times for an umpire to be a member of the Congressional Cup umpire team. But it was in 1998 when Ralph was the chief umpire for the event. And you know, we all like to think events run smoothly and there are no problems and there's no speed bumps, and the Congressional Cup's been running for 58 years and it runs perfectly. And I can tell you that's not true. And we needed, the ship was really rudderless for a while. And Ralph came and really moved the umpire team back onto solid footing and really built a team that could go forward in the umpiring. After Ralph stopped umpiring, he continued, and Penny continued to come back to Congressional Cup and share the event with us. And while everybody talks about sailing and all the sailing events, and certainly I've got stories I can talk about with Ralph, that's not what I'm going to remember Ralph Roberts most about. It was a family issue that I had, and I gave Ralph a call on the phone, and he spent probably an hour and a half with me on the phone, helping me work through this family issue. And that made all the difference in the life of me, my life, and the life of my family, listening to what Ralph had to say and really taking his wise counsel and advice. So more than an umpire, more than a sailor, more than a judge, he was an incredible mentor and an incredible friend, and I will always be in his debt for that.
Beautifully well said,
you,
Kurt. Thank you, Kirk Brown, and just Julia, what we like to say, what a wonderful sport we have, a fabulous sport. We're so lucky. And that's really what this show is about. I mean, Ralph and Penny watched it together. I'd hear from them after the show, and if I was being a crouton about something, he'd let me know or let us know, but they'd watch and always gave constructive and good feedback. But more than that, it's just a fabulous sport. Penny, I don't know if you want to jump in here and defend yourself from those comments that Kirk just said. It sounds like you were even more popular at Long Beach Yacht Club than the late great Ralph.
No, I don't think so, but we certainly made a lot of friends. And one of the stories that I've been telling recently is that we went up one year and our friends Mark and Robin Townsend, who we stayed with in later years, put on a dinner for us, for all our friends. And it was lovely. Everybody flocked in. And one particular couple came in, the Landis, and they had lanyards around their necks. And beautifully printed, and it had on them, they each had on them in big letters, F-O-R.
F-O-R.
F-O-R. And we said to them, what organization is that? And they said, Friends of Ralph.
That's like the FOSI. We call them the Friends of Sailing Illustrated. That's what FOSI is. And F-O-R, Friends of Ralph. I love it. How are you doing? It's a tough time in your life. It must be.
I'm doing okay. Thank you. And we've got our son Craig on now. He's joined us, so he's down there on the
in the Hollywood Squares. Is that Craig at the bottom?
Yeah.
At least he's bottom. He's on the bottom one on mine. I guess as a couple of you pointed out, it's the Hollywood Square. Craig, we'll get to you in a sec. Before we leave umpiring, first of all, let's go to the comments. We've got a lot of great comments, and Julia, you always like to remind us that people should go back and look at the comments afterwards because we're not going to be able to cover them all. We're 50 minutes in here, and we still got to talk about the America's Cup and the ocean race. But look at this comment from Rob Fry over in, he was also obviously in New Zealand and the father of one of my favorites, sailors, Leo Takahashi. He says, my memories of Ralph go back when I was a kid sailing P-class dinghies at Takapuna Boating Club at Bayswater, and Ralph was sailing his fin. He was always happy to let us go for a spin in his fin. There's a little rhyme there, a spin in his fin when it was light, and encouraged us to do it. Well, that was typical Ralph, just always looking after everybody at the club, in the dinghy park, everywhere, the other judges and umpires, wherever we were, as you've been hearing. Before we leave judging and umpiring, I've got a video now to show from Dave Perry, who submitted it. It's 4 minutes long, but it's sort of a segue also into the schooling and the Takapuna Grammar School that we're going to talk about in a sec. But this is, like Yosha's, a fabulous video courtesy of Dave Perry. Have a look.
Everyone, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dave Perry. I live in Southport, Connecticut, about an hour from New York City. And in the background is my home club, the Pequot Yacht Club, circa 1962 or so. And I, like all of us, were saddened to hear of Ralph's passing, but also, like all of us, I'm sure, we're feeling I'm very happy that Ralph had a very full and productive life. I was fortunate to be with Ralph in February of 2020. I was down there for the Youth Match Racing World Championship in Auckland, and he and Penny invited me over for a lovely dinner and a catch up. And I returned home about 2 weeks later for the world to be shut down with the pandemic. So I was happy to be with Ralph for that time right before we couldn't go outside anymore. But Ralph was in full storytelling mode when we were down there, and he recounted the story of how he single-handedly did something that led to both of my grown children becoming world travelers and the lover of world cultures, all thanks to Ralph. So here's what he did. In around 1994, Ralph was a young pup attending the ISAF meetings, and he was sitting in on a youth committee meeting, and they were talking about ways to grow the sport. And as he tells it, his chair slid across the floor somehow, made a noise, and John Barker turned to him and said, "Young man, do you have something to say?" And so he went for it. He said, "Well, I've been thinking that it would be a great idea if ISAF would provide a coach at large at the Youth World Championships to help all the kids who arrived there without a coach." And John apparently said, "Well, that's a great idea. Now you go out and figure out how to pay for it." Well, it took Ralph all of about 1 day to secure all the funding he needed. He had help from Ding Schoonmaker and John Barker and a few others. And he said, "I have the funding, but I also want to tell you that the first coach at large should be Dave Perry." Well, I have no idea how he got that notion, but I'm sure glad he did. After being the coach at large in 1995 and 1996, when John Barker asked me to do it again in 1997, I said, "Well, John, listen, happy to keep doing it, but instead of paying me a fee, would you cover my expenses so I can bring my 9-year-old son with me to the championship?" Figuring what a great way to see the world. And John said, "Sure." So off my 9-year-old son Alex and I went to Fukuoka, Japan in 1997. In 1998, I asked John the same question. He said, "Sure." So Alex and I headed to Cape Town, South Africa in 1998, where Alex met all the sailors and had a great time that he still remembers to this day. And then in 1999, I figured I'd go for it. I said, "John, would you pay for my wife, Betsy, and my son and daughter, who at the time was about 8 years old, to go to Kuopio, Finland?" And he said, "Sure." So in 1999, off I went to Finland with my full family. We had a great experience there. And the last event was in 2000. And I said, "John, are you up for doing the same thing?" He goes, "Absolutely." And so I was able to take my wife, Betsy, my son, Alex, and my daughter, Eliza, to Sydney, Australia. Well, these experiences are things that we still talk about today in our family. Our daughter, Eliza, went on to spend her junior year in high school in Uganda in Africa. And then after college, she was a travel agent. And for 2 years, she arranged other people's travels around the world. Our son, Alex, who's now fully grown and living in California, he's traveled to every continent in the world. And he now is the president of the Latin American division for the clothing company Patagonia. And he speaks fluent Spanish. So there it is. I treasure the love of the world and the love of cultures that our two children have. And I certainly never would have been able to afford to give them that love on my paltry salary as a school teacher at the time. It's all because of Ralph Roberts and his vision and his ability to get something done that has allowed my children to have the experiences that they had as kids and to allow them to grow up to be the wonderful adults that they are. So, Ralph, thank you very much. And of course, I'll miss you terribly.
I absolutely love that from David. It almost brought a tear to my eye.
Yeah.
And I'm not that sentimental, as you know, Julia, but I just thought that was fabulous. Dave Perry, thank you. He may or may not get on here, but he said he was traveling today and he sent that along. And I appreciate, David, that very much. We're going to talk about the Ralph Roberts Student Service Center at the Takapuna Grammar next. But let's go to a couple of comments. We read Rob Fry's comment. Rob, thank you for that. Clayton Embley saying an electrician, a plumber. He loved that line with Paul and talking about going into the Royal Yacht Squadron 1958 through the tradesman's entrance. What a great tribute in our sport.
Yes.
Merritt talks, we are more about similarities than bank accounts. Isn't that the truth, Clayton Embley? Thank you. Clayton, a good bourbon drinker. Graham Sweeney up in Yell in Scotland. We got a worldwide audience on here again, as usual. This is a great lesson. We all go on about the boats, the tweaks, the gadgets, but in all honesty, it really not what makes our sport. It's not what makes our sport amazing. It's those great supporters of our sport. If we think back, we all know somebody who helped us, who influenced us. These few are the true pillars of our sailing society. Thank you, Graham Sweeney, for that's fabulous. And Steve Gruber, that is a cool story from David Perry. Indeed it is. And thanks again, David. And now let's segue through, and we'll go back to our panel and see. This is our panel. Go back to our panel in a sec. But I want to just put these slides in that I found online. I only know about Takapuna Grammar because our kid, Meg, Leslie's and my daughter, Meg Eamon, went to Takapuna Primary, and we didn't know where the cup was going to be after 03. And of course, Olingi won it and took it to Europe, but we were thinking she might also go to Takapuna Grammar School as she got older. But because of Ralph's mom and the family involvement, from what I've read on stuff and on the Takapuna Grammar's website, the Roberts family has had a great involvement. And in 2009, the Ralph Roberts Center was dedicated at Takapuna Grammar School. A building worth $6 million honors a promise. This is from stuff.co.nz at the time, that helped make Takapuna Grammar School what it is today. The new Student Service Center, known as the Ralph Roberts Building, has a library, senior study center, 10 classrooms, and a cafe, as well as students' services. Mr. Roberts said he is honored to have a building named after him. This was quite an occasion. That is I guess the then Prime Minister, right? Mr. Keyes, Prime Minister Keyes, in the middle, and I believe the principal on the right. I quote, "I'm aware that there are many other deserving candidates," Ralph said, "for this honor, and therefore it truly came as a surprise to be selected from among such peers and colleagues," says the businessman and former Olympic sailor. Principal Simon Lamb, I guess that's the gentleman on the right, says Mr. Roberts helped shape the school. He says Roberts' mother, Zella, fought to keep the school's grounds in 1951 when the government wanted to put state housing on the land. So you think that Ralph's a sailor. He's more than that. He's a leading light in the community, not just at the Takapuna Boating Club. Here's one more shot. He must be honoring student athletes. There's sports awards galore there, Ralph in the middle. It must be a fairly recent shot. Who would like to help me with all of that?
Probably.
Please.
Yep. I think it was the inter-secondary school sailing championships, and this team from Takapuna Grammar won the championship. So those were some of the sailors, and Ralph, with great difficulty getting there, but he got there, presented the prizes.
Beautiful.
How nice. Yes.
Really nice. Well, I'm in many ways, Penny, I wish
Is that recent?
Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah. Yes.
Is that recent? Because that
recent.
Team was actually coached by Matty Mason from the
That's right.
America's
That's right.
Cup.
Maddie's in the shot there in the upper right.
Yeah, he's the good-looking one.
Okay, so that explains that picture. Fairly recent, good quality shot too. Anything else, Penny or others, about the Takapuna Grammar School and your involvement there?
Yeah, well, everybody talks about the Roberts family. My mother was a foundation pupil there in 1927.
Wow.
So we were actually there earlier.
Oh, that's great.
A couple more comments here. Steve Gruber saying, I respectfully disagree. There are far more than a few. There are several in my life, meaning mentors, that had a huge impact on my growth and sailing. The difference is that not anyone would have heard of them. Well, that's true. Just the comments are rolling in. And again, Julia will remind us to go back and have a look at them afterwards. Speaking of comments, I've got one more video to air. And normally we'd air it in a segment we call Alistair's Awesome Aussie Anecdotes, right, Julia?
Right.
Alistair Murray, who is a longtime friend, executive chairman now of Ronstand, the fitting company, and is now president of Australian Sailing, sent this video in. And when you get an Aussie being so complimentary of a Kiwi, something is up here. Watch this.
G'day, Tom, Julia, and all the FOSI. Greetings from Meetung, beautiful Meetung. This is AAAA, Alistair's Awesome Aussie Anecdote for the week, and just something a little bit different. I thought I'd like to contribute to a tribute to the great Ralph Roberts, and I know that Tom's doing a feature on him today. So, as president of Australian Sailing, it's most apt and opportune that I should say a few words as a tribute about this about the great man. I didn't know him particularly well, but I did meet him quite a few times when he was in Australia for adjudicating on with various yachting events and contributing as he always did. So just a few highlights as far as I'm concerned. As I said, he wasn't a great friend because I didn't spend a lot of time with him, but I certainly admired him and I knew what he contributed to sailing. He was an absolute New Zealand sailing icon. We've got a few of those in Australia too, and he was definitely one for the country of New Zealand. As an Olympic sailor himself, as a team manager and administrator, and as I remember him, as a serial volunteer. I know he sailed the Finn and the Flying Dutchman, and he won just heaps of nationals, so he's obviously a very talented sailor. He did the Olympics in 1960 and 1968. He was a manager in 1984, and what I remember about 1984 was that New Zealand's performance was absolutely unbelievable for a small country. I know they won, from memory, 2 golds and a bronze, and from memory the golds were a gold in the Finn to Russell Coutts, and a gold in the Tornado to Sellers and Timms, and that was the last names. And the bronze, it was from memory, it might have been in the windsurfer, and it would have been one of the Kendalls. So it'll be interesting to see how good my memory is. And then he was following that, the chef de mission at the 92 Barcelona Olympics, and that was a great honour for him, of course. He then went on to sports administration, supporting the sport of sailing specifically, president of the New Zealand Yachting Federation, of which he was subsequently awarded life membership later, an MBE for his services to yachting. He went on to work with World Sailing. I know he was an international judge, which is the capacity that I saw him in on his visits to Australia, and just an all-round unbelievable contributor to sailing. So from all of us in Australia and those of us at Australian Sailing and all Australian sailors, condolences to the Roberts family. He'll be sorely missed. He was an absolute legend of sailing, and sailor was richer because of him. We need more people like him in the sport. See you later, guys. Bye.
Our dear friend, Alistair Murray, current president of Sailing Australia, Australian Sailing, I can remember as they changed the names of these federations around. And Alistair contributes a regular feature for the show called AAAA, Alistair's Awesome Aussie Anecdote. And that was it today without the usual fanfare because we just wanted to cut through quickly. Anyone want to wrap up? Penny, do you want to respond, or anyone else? Does Craig want to respond? Nope, hang on. Say again, please. Go ahead.
I said I can say a couple of things. I thought I'd better. Can you hear me all right?
Great, Craig. Craig Roberts. How old are you, Craig?
54.
Oh, you're just a kid.
Yeah, I thought I'd better jump in when you thought I was Brett here. So
I'm glad he looks like his mother.
Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, Dad got better looking as you got older.
That was my influence.
I just wanted to echo Peter's thoughts and say thank you, Tom, for having this today. Dad would listen to this every time it was on, and the last couple of years I'd walk into their apartment and Dad would have it on at about 100 decibels because his hearing wasn't that good. So I always knew it was you. I had a couple of stories, but I mean, as a kid growing up, the first question to me was, as Ralph's son, are you a good sailor? And of course, I'm not a good sailor. I'm a terrible sailor. So poor Dad used to sort of just turn his head away and not say too much. But I had to sort of say to them, yes, I can sail, but I'm not great. Anyway, I did go sailing with Dad quite a few times over the years. And one boat he used to sail and always win in was something called the Naval Whaler, which is an old sort of lifeboat that the Navy used to sail. It was a sort of put together boat, and you'd use oars to spritz for the sails, and Dad would always be doing bits and pieces to try and go faster. But, you know, you just used to get a crew from whoever turned up on the day. And unfortunately, these people didn't realize how competitive Dad was. So anyone that got on Dad's boat and wasn't doing well got yelled at for the entire race. And by the time they got back to the deck, they used to run away shaking. So it could be pretty tough.
Well, thanks for that. Anything else you want to say, Craig?
Richard and I did the eulogy for Dad. We had to split it because Dad's done so many things. I talked about his personal life and Richard talked about his sailing, but everyone there and all the people that have been around him for their whole lives were just blown away by how much he's achieved and how much he did. I said in my part that he did more than most people did in 3 lifetimes, and that's actually correct. So, yeah, it was an amazing man. So I'm sure he'll be missed by everyone in the sailing world.
He will indeed. And Richard kindly sent me the notes from the service was last Friday?
Yes.
This past Friday. And I read through the notes and I didn't think there was any point putting them on here, but beautiful notes. He will be sorely missed. I'm just going to go through now and summarize what I think. This courtesy of the Commodore of the Takapuna Boating Club. Ralph won his first national title at age 19 in the Z class, not the P class, the Z class, in 1954. Multiple national championship titles in the Finn, FD, and Soling, finishing 6th in the Finn class at the 1960 Rome Olympics, selection as a reserve sailor for the 64 Japan Olympics, sailing in the FD class with Jeff Smale in the 68 Olympics, finishing 8th, managing the NZ Olympic yachting team in the U.S. in 84 at L.A., Long Beach, appointment to the Olympic sailing jury in Busan in the 88 Olympics, Korea, appointment as chef de mission in 90 for the 92 Olympics in Barcelona. Ralph and I actually had, I'll tell you what, we actually had some fun in Barcelona. I was on the jury in Barcelona and again in Savannah. Ralph and I did carry on a bit in Barcelona. No, yeah, it was all clean fun, but we carried on. Serving as president of the then New Zealand Yachting Federation from 86 to 89, and for a second term on the YNZ board from 2006 to 2012. In 2010, he was made a life member of Yachting New Zealand, receiving an MBE in 93 for services to yachting, as you've mentioned. Several of you mentioned, receiving the Olympic Order of New Zealand from Dr. Jacques Roga, who was then president of the IOC and himself a Finn sailor, in 2011, and a life member of the Takapuna Boating Club. Thanks to Commodore James Jordan for sending that along. Okay, back to the panel for any final comments from anybody.
Yeah, Ralph, Tom.
Paul.
I have to leave. I have to go to a yacht club meeting, and there's so many stories to tell about him. the Finn class loved him because he didn't disqualify anybody. If you were sailing badly, he'd take you after the race and give you hell, tell you to clean up your act. What a great friend he was for 65 years. And Penny, I'm sorry I have to leave, but why don't you come up and visit Mary and I? We'd love to see you up here. Thank you very much. What a wonderful time you had with my friend Ralph. Thank you. Sorry I have to leave. I have to go to a meeting.
Well, at least you're going to a meeting, Paul. You're not going to play paddleball or something.
The squash I play.
Squash.
Yes.
Okay. Well, give him hell at the. Are you going to the RC at the Royal Canadian Yacht Club? I trust.
Yes.
Okay.
And so anyway, and it's great to see you. And just remember, if you go to Malta, look up Valentino. He's a great tourer of Malta. Good to see you, Peter. Bye.
Same here, Paul.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else want to have a final say?
Can I just, or maybe wrap up with just the
Please.
quote that we had at the end of Ralph's funeral service, and it was a service for me that just summed up Ralph. Bit sexist, but it was written a long time ago. So from Longfellow, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And it ends up, lives of great men will remind us we can live our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints in the sands of time.
Very nice. Very nice.
I've always thought
Penny,
that too.
Craig, thank you. Thanks to all of you for joining us for this. This has been, for me and everybody else around the world who couldn't be there last Friday. I'm sure this has helped all of us with our grief and our, just as you can tell, everybody just loved the guy so much. No surprise in that. And thanks again, Richard Gladwell, for really helping me get this together, and Kurt Brown as well. Peter, your submission, and everyone else who's helped out with this.
And remind people that they can see it anytime.
Yeah, this is in perpetuity on Facebook and on Exactly Right and on our YouTube channel.
Tom,
please.
It's drink o'clock, so we maybe should all raise a glass. It's always drink o'clock.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very, very much.
Lovely seeing you.
Benny, thank you very much. We're going to continue on here. I've got one more slide to show, and that is a slide sent by Richard this morning. He's got his IYRU or ISAF pants on. I just love, Ralph, rather not, Richard sent this. Just a fabulous shot. And this is how I'm always going to remember him. In kind of beach clothes, sailing clothes, feet in the water, remembered with love. Ralph Roberts, 26 September 1935 to 19 March 2023. May he rest in peace. Richard Gladwell, thank you for that. Thanks to everybody for joining us. We're going to move smartly forward now. We've got a little bit on the America's Cup, and we've got, of course, a little bit on the Ocean Race as the lead boat, or boats now have gotten around the Horn, Cape Horn, and then we'll call it a day. We're an hour and 15 minutes into today's show. But let's get to our regular report from our international man of mystery, John Emmett, who, guess where he is now, Julia?
Oh my gosh, I don't know.
He's in Palma.
Oh.
He's gone from Thailand to here and there, back to the UK, and now he's in Palma coaching at the Princess Sophia Trofeo.
Oh,
yeah. Here's his report.
Julia and all the FOSI. If you haven't done so already, please like, share, and subscribe. And Tom, very sorry for getting this video to you so late, but it's been quite a busy day in Palma, where I am for the Princess Sophia Regatta. In fact, you can probably tell by the beautiful background, but probably the lack of light on my face because the sun is beginning to set. But this is an amazing regatta, and it's something I've done for over 20 years. In fact, I think it made the pandemic particularly hard emotionally because you just miss those things, seeing everybody, and it's all the Olympic classes. Although we are spread over 2 venues, Of course, well, you might have guessed, I'm here with the Ilkers, and I've been doing a few beach interviews, which I'm going to try and edit later and get them up in HDR, and it's always an interesting learning experience for me. But I do think these multi-class regattas, where we have all the Olympic classes together, are very important. So we have, I was going to say the windsurfers, but probably I guess I should call them the IQ foils. We have the riders of the foils on the same beach as us, so that could be quite exciting if we ever come in at exactly the same time. But this regatta is going to be very, very important for a lot of people, so I'm going to try and do daily videos. We'll see how it goes. It's surprising just how long it takes to edit and all the rest of it, and the key thing for me is the learning. So in these regattas you will see how well people perform under pressure, and that's such an important skill. It's not performing in training, it's performing under pressure. And I think you remember we talked about the rule of thirds. If you're pushing yourself a third of the time, you exceed expectations. A third of the time you're okay, and a third of the time, well, maybe you're underperforming. And the trick in terms of peaking, because let's be honest, these regattas are qualification for the Olympic Games for a lot of people, if not just qualification for the World Championships or the test event, you need to peak at the right time. I mean, the Dutch windsurfers were amazing to absolutely dominate at the Olympic Games and just get that level right where it needed to be, right at that crucial time. And some of it is venue analysis. A lot of people went to Andorra. In fact, I'm still sore for that. Shows I've got a bit more fitness work to do. Whereas the British team, who I've been doing a few interviews with, they've been here training, and we shall see whether that shows in the end results. One thing's for sure, as we get closer and closer to Paris 2024, the level of competition is going to get higher and higher, and therefore the competitions will get closer and closer. So really one to watch, and hopefully see you on the show, and very best of wishes to everybody.
Thank you, John Emmett. Get to the front of the fleet with John Emmett Sailing, who likes to say at this point, Julia?
Yes, don't miss the opportunity to like, follow, and share.
Indeed. John always says that here at this point. Julia says it at the end of the show. And if you're just joining us, we've just had a fabulous, Julia and I were talking during John's video about what a nice group. All of you have nice contributions and tributes from everybody. Gordon Smith saying, thanks, John Emmett. Ken Glidewell is saying happy birthday to the late, great Staff Commodore R.C. Keefe, who just passed away here. One of our terrific Commodores at St. Francis Yacht Club. Andrew McIrvin, we have a total power outage here in South London, but can watch on an iPhone. I hope you get your power back in a hurry, Andrew. I'm looking outside here, and it's rainy. Everybody's talking. I see worldwide news reports about the horrible weather again in California. It's not horrible. It's nothing that Graham Sweeney doesn't deal with up in Yell, Scotland, Julia, all the time.
Oh, yes.
Huh?
Yes, maybe even worse.
Maybe even worse. It's nothing that we don't deal with in the upper Midwest all on and off. But Andrew, I hope you get your power back. Stingray's worried that John's going to step off the balcony. That's his hotel, nice hotel in Palma de Mallorca. Gordon Smith saying to Alistair Murray, that triple or the quadruple, the 4A was great. Indeed it was. Rob Fry is confirming what John Emmett told me earlier today. He said Rob is saying everyone, see up there at the top of the comments, everyone is in Palma. And indeed it is. It's the big Olympic, really it's the start of the Olympic trial season. And for some countries, this is the Olympic trials, doing well at the Princesa, what is it? The Princess Sofia Trofeo. Trofeo is the Spanish. I once had breakfast with her and her mom, the Queen, in fact, twice in Kiel during regatta. And of course, I know her dad fairly well. His Majesty, the former king. Nice comments about Ralph. Rob Fry saying again, there's 104 49ers there, including apparently Leo, Leonard Takahashi, with his new effort. So that's all cool news. And Powers On, Neil Collingridge is saying, also in London in Southeast 11. He's saying it's on, so hope your power Alistair is back. And remember, we're going to have Andrew McIrvin on the show not Andrew McGurk. We're going to have Andrew Pindar on the show on Friday, and then Ralph. I better have another sip of coffee, Julia.
I know it's strong coffee. I know.
And it's nothing, no booze in it this
No,
time.
not a problem.
After what we did to ourselves last Friday, my goodness, we'll never have booze during the show again. Pindar on Friday, Kayard on next Tuesday, and I'm trying to get McIrvin back on to give us a preview of the Maxi season, which they're well and truly about to be into.
Right.
And also any COVID updates and anything else. He's always interesting, but We'll see if we can get him on.
Be good.
Fritz Mueller down in Miami is saying, that was such a wonderful tribute to Ralph Roberts. I only know his brother Clive. I only knew him briefly. Clearly, they came from the same mold as champions and as people.
What a nice thing to say.
It is. It is indeed and absolutely true. Okay, let's get into the ocean race. Quick update. We're not going to give the full-on enchilada here because, as you know, they're on leg 3. The leader, Team Milica, has gotten around the Corn, Cape Horn, on the 27th, so yesterday, almost 2 days ago now. And Bravo Zulu to that team, Boris Hermann, who is, I guess, sailing for, that team is, I think, registered with Switzerland. But of course, Boris Hermann from Hamburg, from Germany. And we've been following him on and off in the Vendée, and Bravo Zulu to them. They're well and truly in the lead, but they're not too far ahead of Wholesome PRB. We'll see more about that here in the race report from today. Oh, I forgot I have to voice these. The leg leaders were met by moderate seas and low cloud, which obscured the views
after 1 month sailing
of the Cape. Antoine Oriol, who's their onboard reporter.
I have no word to describe what I'm feeling right now. It's just magical.
27th of March, Team Wholesome PRB rounded at 1740 UTC, and after a short break to enjoy the moment, they turned north into the Atlantic, not far behind. On the other side of the continent, the chasing boats are in light winds and have lost many miles on the leader. You'll see that on Clark Chapin's charts in a moment. Sam Davies on biotherm.
Not very far from Cape Horn.
Look at
it's
that.
The first time I've been here with no wind. It's a bit unusual for the Southern Ocean.
After multiple breakages earlier in the leg, 11th hour racing have done well to nurse their boat to the Corn.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be.
Yeah,
we probably
snake
see a bit the shore before going to the Horn.
Gusty Metro on 11th hour racing.
Yeah, I think we'll enjoy the moment.
It's legendary for sure. For offshore sailor, you do it one, twice, and maybe 10 times if you are Jean-Luc Vandened or Baubeking. But it's still not that many. And each time, it's a lot of energy, it's a lot of work to come here. And that's why it's always a huge moment for us. After saying that, it's not finished because there is still 2,000 miles to go, 5-6 days to go to Itajaí, Brazil, on the finish line.
I wasn't going to play I've got now the video, the drone footage from this, and Alistair Murray is saying about how wonderful this drone footage has been. And I think I'll play it anyway. I mean, where are we going to go?
Yeah.
I haven't had breakfast yet. I'll have it after the show, and what's another 3 minutes? Right. Enjoy it. This is a very cool video. Have a look at this one.
First time we see land after 1 month sailing. I have no word to describe what I'm feeling right now.
Some
it's
of this
just magical.
Obviously a repeat from the race report, but a lot of it not.
A month of no land.
Will Harris.
And all the albatrosses welcoming us now. It's cool.
2.5 miles, 30 minutes.
6th time for you.
The 6th time. But the last time I could see it was 2014, almost 10 years ago.
And how does it feel today?
I will see the real emotion when we passed it. I don't want to say too much before we're there.
Okay.
We try to get there quick because Holcim is not far behind. Yeah, 20 miles. Okay, cheers, guys.
Perfect. Cheers. Yeah. This is the best recovery.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah, the audio is not the fault of your receiver or of our studio here.
It's the wind.
Yeah, it's just a little overwrought. Nice. Rosin Kuiper. There it is. That's the closest I'm ever going to get to the horn.
It's a bit like the finish line that we had.
Right here on Sailing Illustrated on this video.
Well, I poured a little bit of rum.
Okay. Oh, you did?
Yeah.
You've been around the horn.
Yes, twice.
Fog Machine says we've come a long way since Paul Kayard's written reports from EFL, EF language. Yep, that is true.
And they were terrific, I must say. I loved them.
Nice stuff. Okay, I'm glad I played that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got a chart from Clark Chapin, and you can see the two boats are well and truly up there who are around the Cape are, they are launched and quite a bit ahead now of Biotherm and 11th Hour Racing. 11th Hour Racing now, it looks like they are ahead. I don't know when Clark prepared this chart, but it was a couple, 3 hours ago. Anyway, thanks again for that, Clark Chapin, for that chart that you and he provided a couple others, but I thought we'd just do the one today, and we'll give a more extensive and full report on Friday, because we now have an America's Cup update via this day in history, Julia.
Oh, wow.
Do you know what happened on this day in history? The 28th of March, 2022.
March 22.
A year ago. Here is your first and only clue. It's on your monitor. Program monitor. You recognize that town in Spain? In Catalonia?
Oh, yeah.
You recognize that town in Spain with a cup in front of it, the harbor? Barcelona.
Yes.
A year ago today, Barcelona, it has been exactly 1 year since the announcement that Barcelona had secured the venue rights as the host city for the 37th Cup, and following the signing of the agreement, work has been ongoing transforming the Port Vel and Port Olympico, Port Olympic areas, ready to host the competing teams who are setting up bases and will be on site from this Northern Hemisphere summer. That's, you can see the Port Olympic at the top, and I'm about to lose. This is where the Youth and Women's America's Cups will be headquartered, but the teams are down there at the bottom. The race village over here, the fan zone and giant screens. Ineos Britannia, more fan zones over here on the beach and giant screens. Alinghi is here. Ineos, Alinghi, more fan zones. New York Yacht Club, American Magic, LRPP, Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli, ETNZ in here on this pier. That's the Columbus Circle, I believe. I'm not 100% sure. Orient Express Racing Team, the new French team, down there at the bottom of this chart. And here is a video that they released a couple days ago, promoting, once again, Barcelona as the AC37 venue. So we got a preliminary regatta coming up here in September, and then a year from then it will be then the preliminary regatta is just down the coast, and then the big enchilada the following Northern Hemisphere summer in 2024 in Barcelona, September, October. With I think the youth is slightly before that. Now I thought this was a good time to catch you up on what is going on with each of the teams, and they sent out a nice release, so I thought we should cover them. Before I get into it, I see a comment from Stingray saying his rental is directly across from the 2B Alinghi base, the mega fan that he is, the super fan of the Cup. Stingray is going to be there. Yes, all of you, a lot of you knew Tracker. Who's Tracker? There's a new name. Hi, Tracker. Steve Gruber, Gordon Smith, everybody pretty well knew that Barcelona had been named as the venue a year ago today. Great show, everyone. Rick Bannerow. Hey, Rick. Rick used to run Rolex's sailing involvement. Nice to see you on, Rick. And great show, everyone. Thanks for all the great stories of Ralph. Ed Worley, it has been reported that the Swiss AC-75 structure suffered structural failure and lost the rudder while sailing. Yeah, I saw something about that, Ed, just before we went to air. I didn't have time to stick it in. We'll cover that if that's indeed is the case, and I think it is on Friday. But in the meantime, let's just quickly review each of these teams. The Challenger record, Ineos Britannia, which is really the Royal Yacht Squadron, received their AC-40 in October and also elected to build their own prototype 40-footer known as an LEQ, less than or equal to 12 meters, and selected Palma, Mallorca as their winter training base. So they're out there in Palma. Maybe John Emmett will go have a look at them as well while he's there for the Olympic Classes Regatta. Team principal and skipper Sir Ben is looking forward to starting racing, saying, quote, "The 37th America's Cup venue announcement was a much anticipated moment that we had all been waiting for, and it certainly did not disappoint. The team was, Ben's right. He's right on message here. The team was delighted that Barcelona had been chosen, as we knew it would provide excellent facilities for operations, competitive racing conditions, and an engaging setting for visiting fans. We had already committed a winter training camp in Palma, which meant that once the news was official, our focus would be on a midsummer 2023 move to the host venue. Our base is now well under construction, and in the coming months, we are looking forward to moving in and immersing ourselves in the Barcelona community and experiencing that special Catalonian culture." I love Catalonia. I love Barcelona. With 6 teams entered, there is already a buzz in the city ahead of us, all hitting the water. This could be a special edition of the Cup. Yeah, Graham Sweeney, Ben's test foils, the so-called W foils, are back on. They had a similar version of them in AC-36. So let's see now what Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli are up to, according to the press release from AC37. The finalists from 2021, Luna Rossa, LRPP, also chose to build an LEQ-12 and base themselves at their normal base in Cagliari in the south of Spain, Sardinia, for the winter training period that has yielded some astonishing results. However, Max Serena, skipper and team director of LRPP, is very much looking forward to shifting operations to Barcelona, saying, we can't wait to sail in Barcelona. We have recently started the construction of our base in Spain, which will be ready by July. Barcelona is a unique European capital that combines history, tradition, and sports. All true. They did a terrific job with the 92 Olympics. I was there on the jury. Fabulous job they did. The America's Cup will attract fans from all over the world and are sure that the city will provide strong emotions. It's not a word you'd see, Julia, from the Anglos, but I like how the Latins use emotions. That kind of. Where was I? Emotions to the public, both on the water and on shore. This summer in Barcelona, for the first time, we will have the opportunity to compete against other teams aboard the AC40s while waiting for the inaugural America's Cup preliminary regatta in Villanova, which we are confident will be an important kickoff for the participants. And here is a little video from LRPP.
Andre, how did the day went, and did you like the conditions so far today?
Yeah, the day was great. The forecast was showing some soft breeze for today. Instead, it was a really nice sea breeze day, almost summer Cagliari sea breeze. It was really nice.
And well, last Saturday, the first pre-regatta has been fixed. Have you ever been sailing in Villanova e la Geltrú?
No, never been there. We've been racing in Barcelona with the 49ers a few times, had a few training camps there, but never at the race venue.
And Andre, we have seen an almost capsize. Of course, you're smiling already. We want to know what happened. It was impressive saving by the crew, and
to be honest, we still need to debrief what we did, but for sure we're turning the marks, trying to push the boat and pushing the maneuvers every day more. So it was a bit of a tight roundup, and we just sank on the foil and stuffed the bow underwater. It was pretty spectacular, but I think nothing, just some basic operation mistake and boat handling mistake. Once you start pushing around the marks, it's just stuff that happens.
And what's the plan for the upcoming week? Have you checked the forecast and so?
Yeah, we live day by day on the forecast, and we want to try and get a few more days in the week. The weekend looks some easterlies coming back again, so we're looking forward to some strong breeze again and see what we get.
Andre, regarding the flight control, what's the most satisfying thing about it? When you're flying high or low, how would you describe, when do you like it more, your role?
I personally enjoy a lot all the pre-start situation where you really need to be a lot dynamic on the trim of the boat and keeping it balanced on the sail plane and the foils. It's a lot like going on the wing and moving the weight forward and aft and kind of finding that right balance, not to be draggy, and keeping the boat on the foils when you're at slow speed. And yeah, I like let's say, correcting difficult situations. It's nice when you're out of balance and you manage to lock in the boat again. It's a great feeling.
It certainly is impressive, Andre.
It's interesting how the comments go quiet when we're playing these America's Cup videos, which is, of course, why we do them. Yeah. Now let's check in with Alinghi, and the most visual team so far in Barcelona, according to America's Cup, has been Alinghi Red Bull Racing, because, of course, they're training there, hired both their AC75 Boat Zero. Remember, they bought the first boat from ETNZ, Boat 1 from last time. And their all-new AC40 on the waters where the 37th America's Cup will be held. Speaking about the move to Barcelona, Silvio Arribabene said he's the co-general manager of Alinghi Red Bull Racing, commented, quote, "Certainly the announcement that Barcelona was going to be the host city for the next AC has been very well received by us as a European team. Clearly from Switzerland, the trip here is relatively easy and straightforward, so it was a natural decision to set up shop here. Of course, European team, European venue. We cannot ask for more. And I'm telling you, these guys are going to be good. And you know, you don't all believe me, but they're going to be good. So too are a couple of the other teams, it sounds like. But here's a video from them. In Barcelona.
A naval architect at Alinghi Red Bull Racing. So you work specifically in velocity prediction. What sort of software are you using, and how has AI changed the way you're able to predict America's Cup boat speeds?
Well, I am mostly using software that we coded ourselves, so homemade software. In terms of EA, we kind of use it a bit everywhere, especially on the analysis of the data. Well, that's a bit what I can.
So are you able to bring all the information from the different areas and bring it together to give you that final prediction?
Like the goal of my job. It's bringing everything together and try to estimate what the fastest way to use all the part of this boat.
So what boat speeds do you think we're likely to see this America's Cup?
Well,
do you think we'll break 50 knots, over 100 kilometers an hour?
We will certainly break 50 knots at some points on some specific condition, like for the last Cup.
Do you think this is... Sorry.
Then I think in terms of velocity will be pretty much the same as the last Cup if we have the same kind of wind.
Do you think this is just the beginning in boat speeds? Do you think we're going to be seeing, much higher speeds in the future?
It's a hard question to answer now. It really depends on the rule, how the rule evolve. If in the future it evolves.
So where do you think the biggest gains are to be made?
Well, the gain could be made everywhere. It's hard to give a specific one right now.
So it's just marginal gains?
I think we can gain more than, we can call it more than marginal, but the gains are spread everywhere on the boat.
So the rudder stock is currently sticking out through the deck. Can you tell us what happened?
Well, the rudder let go after a way. Now we are looking at it, checking that everything, what happened basically. But now it's not an answer I can give you.
So is there much damage to the structure?
Not much. We were quite lucky, so it should not be too hard to fix it.
Do you think it's an oversight or a lack of reinforcement in the structure?
Well, currently it's hard to say. We just came back from the water, so it's hard for me to say.
So we saw the pumps go below deck. Did the boat take on much water?
Well, not much. It was just a safety thing to have it ready if we need it, but actually it was not needed.
So how long do you think it'll be until the boat is back in the water and ready to go?
To answer you like that without the answer from the structural guys, I cannot say.
So what is the contingency plan? How do you...
I mean, why does this guy ask these questions? This poor guy doesn't know, and even if he does know, he's not going to say. Right, Julia?
Yeah.
Let's listen.
A lot of boats, so we'll have fun on the 40. That's the next step.
Okay. Some of these are obviously better than others, and that one was, frankly, not so good. Now, here's an interesting development. They sent out this long release with downloadable images and in some cases videos that the teams had just made. This was in a press release that we all got this morning. Mm-hmm. Here's what was the sum and substance of what they sent out on behalf of New York Yacht Club. 2 pictures that are low res that you could not download, no video, and then this one sentence. New York Yacht Club American Magic relaunched their AC-75 Patriot, which is the boat they used in the last Cup, and trained in Pensacola, Florida ahead of receiving their AC-40 in late February 2023, and have been putting long hours in on the water. That's it. Now, is that because there's some angst between New York Yacht Club and Emirates team, between American Magic and ETNZ, or did they not supply anything, so they just had to make that up out of whole cloth? That is the PR guys and gals for ACE. What was that all about? I mean...
Wait till next week.
Say that again?
Wait till next week.
I've already heard. I know, you know me, I don't ask questions I don't know the answers to. So who's now? Jody Shields is still in Bali, where it is Wednesday morning.
Oh, I wish I were in Bali.
Relaxing. The Ineos interviews have generally been pretty good. I agree, Gordon Smith. I think they have been. So Clayton Embley is saying, so a new state-of-the-art AC boat is broken, but a 55-year-old cup winner made of wood is ready to sail. I know the 12s are antiques. Yes, they are. But one of the big problems is that these boats don't have an afterlife, and we all know that's a big problem. Many of you said that. John Sangmeister has said that, and that is true. So I don't know what this was all about with the terse coverage given, the pithy coverage given to New York Yacht Club's American Magic, but then we all know this team is just barely off the ground. Official French challenger Orient Express that we reported on some time ago. Stefan Candler, whom I've known well since the 90s. Stefan is the associate general manager of the Orient Express racing team, is looking forward to sailing both in Barcelona and in Villanova, the Geltrú, and can see a huge opportunity for the event. Now, see, he's not talking about winning. He's talking about the opportunity for the event. Quote, the prospect of setting up our base in the fabled city of Barcelona is thrilling for the team, especially considering Catalonia, already a popular destination for the French, is easy for our supporters and sponsors to visit. We will begin a new chapter in July when our base becomes operational, and in August we look forward to sailing our new AC40 on the waters that are well known to the team. We plan to make the most of every available sailing day to ensure that Quentin Delapierre, who of course is the SailGP skipper of considerable repute, Quentin's going to be driving, it sounds like, and his team master the boat ahead of the first preliminary regatta in Villanova less than a month after they get set up in Barcelona, a month later. The last few months have been full of great news for Orient Express team. The next few months accompanied by the Accor Group, the big hotel group, which is their primary sponsor and, of course, owns the Orient Express. The Société Nautique de Saint-Tropez and our partners and supporters promise to be an exceptional shared adventure. Okay, one last America's Cup update video, and this is a promotion now for the women's and the youth America's Cups. This video just issued in the last day or so, and I'm looking forward to this. I think as long as they don't have problems doing fleet racing in these boats, we'll see. But have a look.
I just can't get enough. It's awesome sailing. It's really fun. I can't wait for more people to get on them, especially youth and the women. They're so fun. They're like a bit of a go-kart, so it's going to be some awesome racing, and I think it's really going to make that big step up in skill sets, which is going to be so good.
They're nothing like I've ever sailed. They're foil fast, and the foils are super cool to learn about and get a hang of. So just looking forward to keep learning and keep asking questions from the guys and having a bit of fun.
Okay, it's a bit, what'd you say? It's a bit of a go-kart. It's like sailing, and it is. I think those AC40s probably are, and I think they're going to be fun, and I think it's a glad. Speaking of Gladwell, I'm glad we're doing women's and youth. And Richard is saying, even if the PR guys wrote the American Magic epistle, you would have to think they could do better than that. For the record, they have done 44 days in the AC75, yes, and 13 in the AC40. Thank you, Richard Gladwell. We got to get Gladwell back on here too. It was nice to have him on today and he, Julia, as you know, he was the along with Craig, Ralph and Penny's son, Craig. The two of them were did the big eulogies at the service on Friday, and apparently Richards and Craig were both terrific, but Richard really hit the ball for the rest of us, the non-sailing, to the non-family. For the sailors, hit the ball out of the proverbial park. Well done, Richard. Good. That's from what I heard people who were there. Any other comments? Steve Gruber saying, I read that Multiplast will be building the French AC75. I had not read that, but no, I don't think there's any surprise in that. Steve, thank you for that. Gets us to the last leg. Let's see what we've got in the last leg. And I stuck this in at the last minute because I was so impressed by the photo, but I have to ask you, is this photo from the SailGP regatta, is this correct or Crutonic? In other words, is this photoshopped or is this the real deal? Look at all those speakers down the waterfront. And Russell tweeted this out or put it out on his Facebook page, Russell Coote, saying, this is what our sport is coming to, meaning the huge crowd and the great big long, as some of you would call it, the tribune, we would call it the grandstands, but I count something Now, there were more than a dozen speakers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 speakers. I don't think I cut anything off here at the bottom, but if those are on what? 20-foot centers? Maybe it shortens up. Is this photo correct or crutonic? Is this photoshopped? But look at the size of that crowd.
Yeah, I don't think
Or
so.
is this the real deal? And if so, what do you think? Why are they going to run it in Auckland? Why don't they just stay there in Wellington? It was Wellington, right? Yeah, it was. Correct or crutonic? Ted Ryman says it's correct. I hope it is correct. Anybody else have an opinion whether that is live or Memorex, as they used to say on the old tape, audio tape commercial?
It looks like it's pretty much real.
I know Russell well enough that I'm quite sure he would not ever see how hesitant people are. We have a lot of people on here still. They're studying it. They don't want to make a comment. Yeah. It's correct. I'm quite sure it's correct. And Christchurch, not Wellington. Thank you, Rob Fry. Thank you. And it is correct. Rob thinks correct now to get them out on a boat. Clayton Emily is saying a true definition of stereo. Is it? Yeah. I think it was a fabulous photo, and bravo Zulu to Sail GP and to Larry, who's put, I'm sure Larry has put, Julia, he's put north of $1 billion into the sport. I mean, I've done a back of the envelope.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting shot. Let's get rid of that scene. I think he's put north of $1 billion into the sport, and you got to give him credit, and
Absolutely.
you've got to give Russell credit for making this happen. Like the Fonz said, Jody Shields says, it's correcto mundo. Was there free beer? Fog machines. Zhao Alexander, I saw Zhao sign on here not too long ago. Correcto. Christchurch was awesome. Stingray is saying, yeah, Christchurch, not Wellington, of course. Thank you. Okay, that pretty well gets us to the finish. I think that was correct, and it's just fabulous stuff. Our tribute to Ralph. I thank all of you who participated as we get now to the finish line here with our J24 shot from Bill Wingrove down in Tampa, Florida, Davis Island Yacht Club. I have but one, Julia, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot today. Mm-hmm. This one is for you.
Uh-oh.
And it's clean.
Oh, good.
Have a look. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to scare you, the kid's talking to the teacher, but Pop says if I don't get better report cards, someone is going to get a good spanking.
Mm-hmm.
You think it's the teacher is going to get the spanking? I don't think so.
I don't know.
I don't know. But the kids today, I mean, it's unbelievable. The kids don't want to work. The kids don't want to have to work. They don't want to get graded. Everybody wants to participate. I mean, it's getting worse, not better, at least in our country. And here's a kid that thinks the teacher's going to get a spanking if his report card doesn't improve. Julia?
Yes?
Huh?
Well,
sign of the times, right?
It is.
Huh?
It is.
Sign of the times. And our thanks to Greg. That came from an Aussie, by the way, from Greg Phillips, not from an American. Okay, that gets us through this one. Julia, once again?
Yes. Please like, follow, and share so your friends can share some of the feelings that came out.
Yeah, especially this one. I think, we've done this, 2 or 3 times. We did one for the fish, for Bob Fisher, almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
When he passed away. We did one for Commodore Anderson, Harry Anderson. Esteemed New York Yacht Club Commodore, passed away at age, we were hoping he was getting to 90 or to 100. He got to 99.
Yeah.
And, we don't do these very often, and with good reason. But when somebody as cool as Ralph comes along,
yes.
Do it. Yeah, Zhao Alexander's, I think, responding to my comment about kids, that it's happening everywhere. My children are doing a great job. Gordon Smith, we had one of your kids on this show. Let's get him back on again. You must be great parents because your kids are doing well, and hopefully my kid is doing well. She's getting married in September at age 31. We're delighted that she is. We're also delighted that those of you who support us via Patreon, become a patron, please, patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated, and give us $1 or $2 or $10 per month. Tier de Jong, he sent a great contribution.
Great.
Yeah, we're going to put his tier. It's got a great contribution for a future show, if not this Friday. Ted Ryman, really nice show with some very cool people. Indeed, Ted, thank you for that. And Zhao and Tier and everywhere else. Yep, it's everywhere, apparently. Let's get these kids back in line. Make them start watching this show. You can shake your finger at them, Julia, and give them a piece of your mind.
Well, let's do that.
I finally got you framed properly with camera 3 here and that nice shot behind you from Jonathan, or that painting from Jonathan Frank that's behind you. That's good. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate all the contributions, as always, to this show, whether audio, video, or images. And you can see there's a long list there, especially for a show like today. Much appreciated. And a reminder that this Friday it is Pindar. Andrew Pindar is joining us, another international man of mystery who's been in Jeddah. We'll be in Milano, I think, tomorrow for the World Foiling Awards, and he's going to update us on his travels and some interesting stories from Jeddah for us on Friday's show. Next Tuesday is Kayard, Paul Kayard, of course, who was the executive director until he stepped down, was pushed out by U.S. Sailing. I've invited the president of U.S. Sailing to come on. He's so far said, well, you're not been very supportive of us, so why should I come on? Well, if we can't hear your side of the story, how can we be supportive? Because so far, the only things they put out, the president's thing on Scuttlebutt, was basically a lot of gobbledygook. And then the treasures piece, which even Julie Ahrens saw and referred to Julia, and Julie Ahrens said it was a nothing burger as well. Yeah. And people you should see the negative comments that have come piling in since. So I wish U.S. Sailing would come tell us what their thinking is after Paul unloads, not on them, unloads off his chest. I'm sure he will. Yes. Next Tuesday. And you be ready to ask him the tough questions, as will we. Julia, anything else? Final thoughts?
No, I think the program was a good reminder about what nice company we're in.
And what a great sport we have.
And the great sport.
And particularly the FOSI. No name calling, no personal attacks, no coarse language. How can you run a show like this with open comments and an open Zoom meeting ID and not get, bombed, scammed, trolled? Yeah. Because we have such a great sport and nice people. Okay, that's it for us. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We hope you will be back on Friday. In the meantime, sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. Ciao for now.